What's up guys, welcome back. Question for you, have you ever fished a fluke? This is one of my all-time favorite baits. And we're gonna talk about a trip that we took out to the pond here recently where I took this and one other presentation, and the fact that I had one of these tied on really paid off. Let's get better. So I've talked to a lot of anglers over the years, and it seems like guys have kind of a love-hate relationship with this type of bait. They either really like it or they really don't like it. They either throw it a lot or they don't throw it a lot. Personally, it's become a confidence bait for me. It's something that I've been using for years. I actually like to rig them up weightless on an EWG or an extra wide gap hook. Here's an example of one of those hooks. What I like to do is I like to get something that's a little bit more stout, a little bit thicker hook. I want the hook to actually provide, you know, a little bit of pull to make it sink a little bit faster, but we don't want it to move too fast. So in terms of movement speed, there's a couple different ways that you could fish this. Some guys like to twitch it fast and bring it along. Other guys like to cast it out, raise it up, let it sink. Actually, when I was in the bass club, there was a guy that I talked to one evening, and he was talking about the first time he ever fished a fluke, and the guy that showed him to do it said, "You're doing too much. You're moving it too fast." If you think about what this is supposed to represent, it's supposed to represent a fish that's dying, another easy meal type bait. So you don't want to necessarily be jerking along and putting all kinds of action in it sometimes. A lot of times what I like to do is I'll cast it out, like I said, I'll rig it weightless with a nice heavy hook, 8 or 10 pound fluorocarbon. That sinks as well, so that helps it get down a little bit faster. But then I'll just kind of raise it up and let it fall, raise it up and let it fall. 2-3 times, reel it in, make another cast. A lot of times what you'll find is those fish will inhale it when it's initially falling, or on 1 or 2 of those movements. That's where I tend to have most of my luck with a fluke. These are interesting too because I talked in some of the previous videos about how this last year was the first year I got into traditional topwater. I was throwing, this is a KVD, it's a Strike King, I think they call it a sexy frog or something like that. However, I had caught fish topwater in the past by casting one of these out past the muck that's next to shore, past whatever's close there, and as I would work it back, when I would get up to that muck, I'd kind of hop it up on top and I would kind of twitch it over the top. And it was less about fishing it, it was more about just getting it in and not getting it all hung up. And I've caught several bass and they'll smack this thing coming across the muck. It's kind of a cool little thing. So I wouldn't tie it on to fish at topwater, but it's just something to be mindful of. If you're around an area like that and there's heavy cover, throw it out and then work it back over that heavy cover if you can twitch it without getting it hung up. We've talked in some of the previous videos about what the bass can and can't see. Now here's the big question that we all need to ponder when it comes to frog fishing. When you're considering colors, when you're thinking about loading up on, I need 10 different types of frog colors, I would argue that you don't. I think the most important thing to consider is the belly.
I will catch all the fish. You stupid redneck.
They're down below that canopy. If they're looking up, if they see movement, if they see a silhouette coming along, this looks like a minnow profile, but how good of a look are they actually getting when they're down underneath? So try it out in places like that too, experiment a little bit. Some people will even take it a step further and they'll rig 2 of these guys in tandem. They'll have their main line and they'll have their hook and they'll attach a fluke. However, above that hook, they'll put a swivel. They'll tie a leader off of that, then they'll hook up another fluke. So they can cast that, and what it looks like coming through the water as you twitch that along is it looks like 2 baits kind of darting along. Definitely more of an active presentation, but it's got a completely different look. So it's a really cool way to kind of expand upon just this simple bait. Right now, my favorite fluke is the Zoom, they call it the Salty Super Fluke. Zoom's packaging is like super basic. I really like that they haven't changed it very much in all these years. Make good baits and they're not very expensive. You'll spend, you know, $4 or $5 maybe on a pack, probably less than that. I think they're like $3.50 at this time. So super inexpensive and great baits. Don't let the kind of dated looking packaging fool you. It's good stuff. These are my favorite. So as with most soft plastics, you could use this on a Carolina rig. You could use this as a trailer. Some guys will use this as a trailer on a spinnerbait, or pretty much any other application where you're looking for like a slender minnow profile. But like I said, my favorite way to fish them is weightless on fluorocarbon with a stout hook, casting from shore, casting from boat. It's a little bit more compact, so you can get it. I wouldn't go in super heavy cover, but you can get it into timber, or you can get it underneath overhanging trees along the shoreline a little bit better than like a wacky worm, for example. You could skip it under docks because it's compact. It's a little bit easier to skip than a worm. It works in all these different applications. This year though, I plan to try out these bio baits. I just became aware of them last year, and I bought these in the off season, and they have these really cool patterns on them. These are perch and these are bass. They're biodegradable, and they have fish oil fused into the bait, which is cool. I'm not, I don't really buy into a lot of the, specially formulated with our super fish scent and it's like garlic. As long as there's something in there to mask the scent of a human, or if there's salt in the bait, which helps it sink, but also gives it some sort of a flavor that seems to be like organic. That's really all I'm looking for. I don't buy into a lot of the super secret formulas or nothing like that. I started using some Attractive with some of my Topwaters and hard baits at the end of last year. I might mess around with that on these this year as well. This is definitely something that's going to get tested because the profile is the same. I've used other Flukes in the past, and I've never had as much luck with those as I've had with the Zooms. I don't know what it is, but this just works for me. And again, it could just be a confidence thing. That happens once you get comfortable with the bait. This is something that I definitely want to try because the pattern on there is killer. If you're moving this slowly through the water, I think that that's a situation where the fish could see the bait a lot better than if they're looking up through a canopy or if they're looking up through muck and they can just see movement. So something to keep in mind. We'll take some of these out this year and we'll see how it goes. I'm anxious to try these. I have a ladybug on my light. Go away. So again, when you're working this, you can twitch it, you can move it side to side, you can get it to glide a little bit, or you can just work it straight up and down. There's a lot that you can do with this bait. It works on freshwater fish, it works on saltwater fish. Guys will use them in both of those applications. Fish eat other fish, and this imitates an injured bait fish. That's what you're trying to mimic. When you hook this up, just your line to your hook, essentially your connection is just hook to line to bait. There's no weight on this. So when you get a good hook set, there's really wedge this in a fish's mouth. There's no heavy weight like you'd get on a Texas rig or even a jig where that fish can whip that thing around and use it as leverage to fling the hook. If you get a good hook set with one of these, you're gonna have a good chance of landing that fish. So, in this series, you can see that over the last 4 trips to the pond, I was skunked twice and I caught 2 fish topwater to this point. One of those fish came on a Z-Man Pop Shad and another one came on a Strike King KVD Sexy Frog. I had trouble fishing the area at first because it was so mucky and I was using baits that were sinking down into the muck. They were getting hung up a lot. I actually tried to fish a crankbait on my first day, it didn't work. Funny story, I actually went out for the first time this year, yesterday, and I took a jerkbait to the pond to try to fish that because it's cold right now and everything's dead, and I thought I'd be able to practice with that, learn how to use it, twitch it along. It was pretty difficult. That's not the right presentation. So we're gonna go back Friday, a couple days from now, and I'm gonna drag a jig because I could see the bottom better than I could ever see it before. I'm gonna drag a light jig, so I'm gonna try to barely drag that along that mucky bottom and see if I can get some bass that way, but I think they're out deep. This is kind of a whole nother topic. We'll hit that later. I'm gonna tape and we'll see how it goes. But this was my 5th trip to the pond, and on this day, I took a Topwater and I took a Fluke tied on. All right, so tomorrow morning, we're gonna head out again. It is 6 o'clock on October evening. And tomorrow morning we're gonna get out and see if we can catch another froggy fish. That would be fun. And I actually started with a rage toad. Right? It's a rage toad. I started with a toad. Now this is either called a rage tail toad or a rage toad, and this is kind of like a combination of like a buzzbait and a topwater frog. You cast it out, you reel it in, the legs flap, it kicks up water. There's pros and cons to this, depending on what you're trying to fish. With a bait like this, if you stop it, it's gonna sink. That can be advantageous if you're fishing over areas with big holes. If you actually want to drop your bait down a little bit into holes as you're bringing it along, this is a good option. If you want to be able to pause that bait and rest it on just on the top of the water, this is not a good option. And I did want to do that. It was also a little bit windy this day, and I had a hell of a time casting this thing into the wind. I don't know why. When I would cast this out, it would like flare out, and it's just the two legs. It would kind of like expand out and spin through the air.
Why is that so tight? Casting weird.
I could not get a really good cast going with this. I'm not sure why. So after a while, I did switch. I might have switched to the Sabile. Let me go to my journal and read my notes from the day. We'll see exactly what happened. I've said this before, guys. If you haven't started keeping a journal, start keeping a journal. It is so awesome to be able to go back and look at your notes. I don't know what just landed on the table right there. I hope that was a ladybug. Had it not been for my journal, I wouldn't have been able to go back and find those things. So here's my notes from that 5th day. October 8th, pond fishing in Illinois. Weather around 72 degrees and clear skies, but it was 40 degrees this morning. I went out at 4:15 p.m. and planned to fish and tape until 6. There were a lot more anglers around at this time of day, maybe 8 or 10 compared to 0 in the early morning. Still the same amount of walkers and bikers. I started out with a black and red sparkle Strike King Rage Toad, which I thought would help me cover more water, but it was really not the right tool for the job. It didn't cast all that great, surprisingly, and I had to move it really fast to keep it on top. Plus, it just didn't come over the muck like I thought it would. I switched to a frog after 15 minutes as I worked my way around the left side of the lake. This time I also took a Zoom Fluke rigged weightless. Mosquitoes were terrible this evening, not sure why. Maybe they're not active in the morning as much. I saw fish on the far left side and slowed down to throw the fluke at them. Had to follow, but he didn't bite. It was actually really bright and clear, and he got a great look at the bait. I bet he would have hit a worm, but he inspected the fluke and swam off. I fished the frog a lot as I worked my way around the lake and missed yet another fish in that back bay area across from the parking lot. By this point, I had about 30 minutes left, and I wanted to make sure I fished the area where I had caught my 2 fish, so I headed that way. Before I went around and across the bridge, I tossed the fluke out in front of a bush overhang and caught my first bass, a little beat up 1-pounder. I cast a few more times and then went over the bridge and threw the fluke around, and after about 5 casts caught a really nice 2.5-pound bass near the same area as my previous trips. I noticed in the shallow, calm water, you can see a lot of activity if you pay attention. For example, when a fish eats on top, you can see it. When they dash after something, they create a wake or a bulge on the surface, so you can cast around them. When they move under the muck, either to eat or run, they create movement. Watch for this along with telltale signs of caught fish like lines and blow-up holes in the muck or piles of grass left behind on the ground that anglers take off the fish they catch. Really a good afternoon. So we learned a couple more things on day 5. One of the things that I didn't really write about in the article that goes along with this video was the telltale signs on shore. Look for lines in the muck where people have fished frogs. Look for blow-up holes where fish have actually struck those frogs. You can see where fish were at. If you're looking on the shore, if you're fishing from shore and you're in an area where you know that fish are coming up with mounds of weeds on their head, and you see these piles of weeds in different locations, you can tell where people were at when they caught those fish. So that's not in the article, but that's something to be mindful of. Again, that rage-tailed toad did not cast as well as I anticipated it would, and I had to keep moving it really fast in order to keep it up on top of the water. Now, if I wanted a bait that I could drop into pockets, that's a good option. But if I want something that I can move and stop and get those kind of wary fish to come up and inspect and strike, that's not the way to go. Most importantly though, on this trip I learned that if you pay attention to your surroundings, you can learn a lot. Like I said, we've talked about this concept before, but this was the trip where I noticed in the water, as I was looking in shallow water, I could see a bulge and I could see ripples as the nice bass I caught was chasing, I assume, food or minnows or something. So I started to move towards it once I saw that, and I started to cast in the general area and work it back. And lo and behold, that active fish saw my fluke when it hit the water, and he picked it up, and I freaking hammered him, and it was awesome. I had to get in the pond to get him out because he swam towards me. He pulled away. He was rip and drag, and then he swam right up towards the shoreline, and he got tucked up underneath. I had to go into the pond to get him out. And when I stepped out, I was covered in these sticky, they weren't like burrs, they were like brown seeds with little hooks on them. They were all over my clothes, and I was covered. It was disgusting. My foot was soaked. It was full of muddy, gunky water, but that was the best fish that I had caught at that lake to that point on a fluke, and it was fantastic. In the last 30 minutes, when I was about to leave after 2 hours, 2 fish on this bait right here. This is what did it. It was a great, great, great afternoon. I was so happy.
Keep swimming down. Oh, nice bass. That's a beat up little fish. That dude's beat up. He was out where he was supposed to be. Cool. Thanks, dude. Almost got skunked. You're to best. I thought I lost him 3 different times. He just kind of gave up. I got a little nick, but we're gonna go with it. Keep hooks in ya. Ooh, yeah. I will go in after you. Come here. Come here. Just give me. That's a stud. That is a stud fish. Right in the tip of the snoot. That is a nice little largemouth. All right, buddy. We're up a little bit high, so swim off. There you go. What is on me? Yes, sir.
So by the end of this trip, I had caught 2 fish out of this pond, Topwater. I had caught 2 fish out of this pond on a fluke, and I had 2 trips to this pond where I got completely skunked. So things were starting to come together. It wasn't great, but it was better. And every time I would go, it was more and more exciting. At this point, I'm like I'm even getting excited talking about it right now. At this point, I was like, yes, this is starting to make sense. I'm starting to make some progress here. Oh, what a sweet feeling it is to make progress. Progress will make you happy. This was making me happy. It's making me happy right now as I retell the story. It was awesome. So if you've been following along with this series, you can see that each time we do one of these videos where we dig a little bit deeper into the trip, there's nuggets, there's things that we can pull out that we've learned. Whether it's the first trip or the fourth trip or now this fifth trip, every time I'm going out on the water, there's something that I'm learning, there's something that I'm adjusting, that I'm tweaking. And then the next time I go, my presentations are better. I'm more focused, I'm more streamlined. I know what I want to do and why I want to do it. Man, it's those improvements that, again, they can make us happy, but they help us to discard so much of the excess. That's what my goal is. As I work on becoming a better minimalist fisherman and sharing these concepts with you guys, my goal is to help us shed the excess. Look around me. I'm still sitting in a mess, but it's getting better. It's getting better. At some point, I'm gonna do a video where I show you guys stages of minimizing, essentially, where I'm throwing away. This bag of baits is to send out to you guys. I'm gonna start doing giveaways. I send you a bag of baits, you go out and fish with it, you tell me how it went, we talk about it, and if you catch some fish, great, then maybe it's something that I try myself, or maybe it's something that, you know, we're gonna share with the other users and see if it's something that they can use. All of these steps, like, they're so worthwhile, and I cannot stress to you, this was what got me excited and made me want to start doing, you know, YouTube videos again, because I feel like this isn't something that's super sexy. It's not something that's gonna appeal to a massive audience, but those of you that get it, those of you that are interested and you can see the value in, like, yeah, I really wanna downsize so I can get up and go whenever I want, and I can take a couple of things and I can focus on fishing and I know what I'm doing versus, oh, let me sit up the night before and put 45 presentations into a bag and get confused when I'm on the water. And it's deeper than that too, but that's just at the surface. That's the initial benefit, is like that focus. If you can see the value in that, there's more to learn. I'm excited for this year, man. I cannot wait. It's only March right now. I am excited. I'm gonna go for the second time in just another day. That's fantastic. So the next time you get out, don't be afraid to tie on a fluke, give it a shot. I would suggest, unless you're in heavy wind, skip the weight. Work it slow, cast it out, raise it, lower it, let it sink. If you're in an area where there's some pads or anything on Topwater, and you can throw it out into them and kind of keep it on top and just just kind of like hop it over the top, do it, man. If you're on a body of water where you would fish worms or Senkos, and you know there's bait fish in the area, tie one of these bad boys on, give it a shot. If it works for you, hit me up on social media. I'd love to hear from you. Let's get better. See you guys.